Good evening. I am Councilwoman Ty Atkins, the chair of the Ways and Means Committee, and also the representative of the 4th District and vice president of the Gary Common Council, here to start the Parks, Arts, Recreation, and Culture Committee for tonight, which is Tuesday, July the 13th. And we're starting a little bit late. The meeting was scheduled to start at 5 o'clock. It is now 5:15. Before we start this particular meeting, I just want to connect with the IT team to make sure these two individuals are not on. So just one more time to check to see if Rebecca Wyatt, okay, James Lane, okay, and one more, Ronald Cohen. Okay. Yeah, so we did reach out. So within our committee tonight, we have one ordinance. The ordinance number is CPO 2021-45. It is an ordinance donating copies of the Gary Pictorial History book to two nonprofit organizations, one being the Legacy Foundation and the other being Indiana University Northwest. This ordinance was sponsored by myself, Councilwoman Ty Atkins, 4th District. Joining me this evening, I have the following members of the Gary Common Council. My council members at large, Councilman Gloria Slay, also Councilman Ron Brewer, my last councilman at large, Councilman Mike Brown, who's also a member of this committee. I also have my 3rd District Representative, Councilwoman Mary Brown, 5th District Representative, Councilwoman Linda Barnes Cotwell, President of Gary Common Council, Councilman William Godwin, 2nd District Councilman Cozy Weatherspoon, and that is it. Also joining us tonight, we have our controller, Malik Harper, and of course, our council attorney, Attorney Renzer Williams. So I am going to give the overview for this ordinance. I will then ask Councilman Ron Brewer to give us a little bit of background related to the council's side of participating in the publishing of this book. And then also I will allow Kelly from Legacy Foundation, who I believe is the only representative from the donation side, on to speak if she has anything to say. So this particular ordinance—
Madam Chairman, you're going to allow people to speak ahead of the council itself?
No, I said I was going to have Councilman Brewer speak specifically, and then I will have questions, of course, and then I will have Kelly speak.
Okay, thank you.
So as I was saying, this particular ordinance, 2 months ago, I believe it was the month of May, in our public meeting, I had brought the question to the floor in terms of what would be the appropriate way for us to honor a request from two organizations, one being the Legacy Foundation and then the other being Indiana University Northwest, to obtain donated copies of this particular book that was published, I believe, in 2018. This particular book was published in collaboration between those two entities and the Gary Common Council. The total amount of the purchase cost of the books was $20,000. The individuals from Indiana Northwest had a large handle in actually constructing it, putting together the illustration, putting together the context, and the Legacy Foundation submitted half of the funding, and I believe the Gary Common Council also submitted the other half, which was $10K apiece. So therefore, those two organizations had came to former Councilwoman Rebecca Wyatt, asking for her to lead the effort to connect to the current council to see if they can get copies of the book that they had never received, just from reference perspective, again, as a donation. So Legacy Foundation had requested 15 boxes of books. I think it's 13 books in each box, which gave us a total of 195 boxes from a donation standpoint. Each book was valued at $21.40. And so within the ordinance, we have the value, the dollar value in just terms of the purchase of the book, right, which was $4,173. Again, that is less than half of what they put into the book for Legacy Foundation. Indiana University requested a donation of 3 books. Again, it's 13 books in each box. I'm sorry, 3 boxes, excuse me. It's 13 books in each box. And so there will be a total of 39 books. And again, I just put the value of that within this ordinance of $834. So the request before the council is for us to support the donated efforts in providing these particular books to those two organizations. Councilman Brewer, I believe when I initially brought this to the floor and was when it was assigned to committee, there were some questions in terms of the council's involvement. Of course, that was, before my time. So I didn't have too much information in terms of the council's involvement and were there anything, I guess, any issues in the past about the collection of the money and was that taken care of? And since this is a donated effort, do you foresee any issues related to us supporting this donation to these organizations?
Let me just say, currently now, there is no problem with the books getting feedback also. There's no problem now with the way that we have public safety facilities, so the accurate accounting of the books can be there for the State Board of Accounts' sake. Following year, there was no findings on the books. They thought everything we had did was in order, so we was able to proceed thus far. I do believe during that time we did give some books away at that time. Even all council members at that time did receive books also. And I believe we gave some to the library, I want to say. Not accurate on that, but I know we gave some to another group. But other than that, I don't know if we had any other movement with the books since then, as far as any purchases or anything of that nature there, because that would have been done through finance. And also the books would have been picked up at the public safety facility. So you would have made your payment here at City Hall through the finance department, and you would have had to pick the book up itself at the public safety building.
Thank you, Councilman Brewer. So just to clarify, to your knowledge, there were some organizations, i.e. the Gary Library, who did receive copies of this book in the past.
Yes.
But the two entities that helped support it, the publishing of this book, had not received anything. Thank
Right.
you. Thank you. At this, Councilwoman Brown,
What is the actual purchase price for the book?
$21.40.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council member have any questions or comments?
Madam Chair,
Councilman Lay?
how did you, this is direct toward Mr. Brewer, how did the council initially come into possession of the books?
Councilwoman Rebecca Wyatt orchestrated this to come to pass and brought it before the city council. She worked with Legacy. At that time, she was over arts, culture at that time. So she authorized she worked to get this put together. Councilwoman Rebecca Wyatt. She was supposed to be on tonight, but I don't know if she's having some difficulties getting on. But I was looking for her to come on because she has more of the history of how all of this got started.
The council put $1 into these books? $1.
The council?
Yes. City of Gary, they paid $1 toward these books.
Did the city council?
City of Gary.
The city of Gary, yes.
And who authorized the payment of the dollars?
At that time, it was Mayor Karen Freeman Wilson at that time.
And what Mayor Karen Freeman was it based on an ordinance?
At that time, I can't recall if it was an ordinance or not. I can't recall.
So you can't recall. Do you recall voting on these books yourself?
Yes. Yes, we did.
So it had to be an ordinance or resolution.
There was, I believe, an ordinance that was put together. Yes.
Passed out. Do you happen to know what the number of that ordinance was?
No, I don't.
Now, the State Board of Accounts found that to be troublesome. They gave you an audit exception.
Yeah, they gave an audit exemption. The way we were storing the books, they was not in they wasn't in a secure location. That was the reason why the State Board of Accounts gave the audit exemption.
So they didn't question the movement of the book.
No.
Why, if former Councilwoman Rebecca Wyatt worked for the Legacy Foundation, why do we get the books? Why wouldn't they just get the books directly? Why are they coming through us? It's a 501c3. And certainly in that university, I've served on their medical scholarship committee 25 years. Why wouldn't it go directly to them? Why do they need to come through the council to get it?
Well, the way it was set up, the books are now set up now as a purchase. That was the initial way the books were set up to be purchased from residents or any individuals to be purchased. So
who? When you said something's to be done, tell me how is the purchase going to be done?
Well, you would come to the finance office and you would make your purchase there, and you would go to the public safety facility and pick up your book.
We had all of the books. They sent us books to sell.
No, they gave us the books. We was able to put a market value to the books.
Why only 2 organizations? I bet you gave some to the library. Why wouldn't any 501c3 given the opportunity to receive some of the books?
I can't speak to that.
How much did Indiana University put up? It's not in the ordinance, I don't believe.
Indiana University, to my recollection, I don't believe they put anything up at that time.
So they had,
If I may.
Yes.
So from the conversations that I had, Indiana University was the creator of the book. So what they put up was the time
That's true.
to do the research, the time to actually construct the book, and the time to submit it to publishing. And the City of Gary and the Legacy Foundation submitted financial contributions to the book. The total cost of publishing the book was $20,000. Legacy Foundation submitted 10, and the City of Gary did the other half of 10K.
and was it done by ordinance?
Was Legacy's foundation donation or their payment done by
No,
ordinance,
the
or the City of Gary?
$10,000. We can't do this for other organizations. The only organization that I know we've been able to do it with is the women group, women shelter group. We have received a couple, as I understand, audit exceptions. One, when you try to give money to a 501c3, and you certainly can't do anything indirect that you can't do direct. So church couldn't call in and say, well, I want you to buy robes, and then we go get the robes and give it to them. Again, for me to be on safe grounds,
Kelly.
I
Yeah.
will.
So I don't know.
One second, Kelly. I just wanted the councilman to
But
finish.
no, I said what I was going to do. She can speak.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Councilman Lay. Wait, is there any other council member that has any comments, or do you all mind if I let Kelly, Vice President, right, of Legacy Foundation, chime in? Okay. Thank you, Kelly.
Yes, thank you. And hi, good everybody.
Hi.
Not that concerned, but was written into the grant request that Legacy Foundation would receive half of it. And so at that time, we didn't want half of that because we wanted the City of Gary to have the opportunity to be able to use them as and it was
Grant written in support of the books, and was the grant written from the City of Gary? That was a Legacy Foundation grant? Or was it, or did you, okay. So can you explain the grant again for us?
Yeah, so the grant was for the publishing and purchase of the Gary Pictorial History books. And so we paid $10,000, which was half of the cost of the books. And in the grant, it was written that Legacy Foundation would receive half of those books. So we declined at the time that the books were published to have half of Legacy because we were better utilized being with the city so that the city could use them for marketing and materials and could distribute to, meetings and with developers and to organizations that are coming. And so we did decline at that time. And now the only reason that, we're here to possibly accept the donation is to help get the books out into the community because they, done yet. We can assist with getting them out.
Okay, thank you. So Kelly, I'm going to have asked, if you have a copy of the grant, could you provide that to me? And then I can distribute that from council members, because it seems like the grant will have the language related to what the relationship was between the City of Gary and Legacy Foundation, specifically related to the purchasing or the support from a financial standpoint of the books. And then I'll provide that to council members inside of the public safety building, just sitting there, not being looked at. And so with the total amount of books that are being proposed from a donation perspective, this particular ordinance that will leave 373 books. So just wanted to also give you guys those data points.
And I would say, I believe the The other largest purchase that we had of the books was from the Katie Hall Foundation. That's the last one I know that did come and make a significant amount of purchase for books. And other than that, like I say, the books have been sitting there, and that was a concern at the council to make sure that the books are not just sitting there. And years have went past as we passed this ordinance, and those books are still sitting there at this time.
Madam
And
Chairman?
that's Councilman Lay.
Yeah. As I understand, you're selling the books. The city is selling the books. Is that correct?
Yes, the city is.
The Legacy Foundation is going to give away the books. Is that correct?
Yes.
Agreement was with IUN. So I'll have to revisit that though.
Okay, what I'm asking a very specific question. Did you have any type of agreement with the city of Gary?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. You know, were you present when the city of Gary in some way took possession or the books were sent to them?
No, I was not present.
Now, did you indicate that, and I'm asking a lot of questions because I'm going to do something. Did former Councilman Rebecca Wyatt work for the Legacy Foundation? Explain to me what that is. What is the Legacy Foundation?
We're the foundation for Lake County, and so we are a philanthropic partner, give out grants to profit organizations, city to work under. Profit organization, city to work under. We give out scholarships to students attending college.
And she worked for you at the same time she was on the council?
No, she has never worked with us.
Oh, I thought you indicated she had some kind of relationship with the Legacy Foundation.
No.
Oh, none.
Not other than as a community partner.
I'm sorry, what is a community partner?
So same as all of you. I consider people we work with collaborators, partners. So we've known her over the years in her role as a leader in the community, but she's never worked for Legacy or in any official capacity with Legacy.
Was she aware of the purchase? I'm a member in some way, but I've never been to a meeting. Was she aware that she was purchasing the books that may be at some time returned to you? Or suggested the books be purchased and returned to you?
Yeah, she was aware of the application that was originally submitted, in which it stated that half of the books would go to Legacy.
And I'm going to paraphrase. I believe inside the ordinance there, we talked about books going back to non-for-profit and making sure that if they did go back, they would not be resold. So that was a discussion that came up during that time also.
Yeah, but when they went to the library and the churches, you used the word purchase.
No, I said there was some books that was given out, and the discussion came up about the books being given out but turned around and being resold. So that discussion did come up. And
So
then
no one purchased from the city of Gary?
no one purchased and resold that we gave books to.
Oh, let's do half the question. Did anyone, when they went into the state, into the finance department, did they purchase a book?
Yes, there was books purchased. The last order that I know of books being purchased was through the Katie Hall Foundation.
What happened to those proceeds?
They're in the general fund, as far as I know of.
So they've been in the general fund since 2018?
Whenever the purchase was. There was no non-reverting fund, anything created during this time when we set up the account. I do know there was no non-reverting fund set up.
The city of Gary have any opportunity to give these books away? Why are we giving them to the Legacy? Why not let the council give them to publish that we have these books and give it to anybody that's a 501c3? Assuming you can do that, I think you can do it.
Well, Legacy is a 501c3, and they have.
Oh, I'm fully aware of that. So it's IU. Yeah, so it's IU. That's not what my question was.
And they've
No,
also
you interrupted me. That was not my question. I didn't
I'm
ask.
the chair of this committee.
That does not
And
mean
so
you
I'm
can be
sharing-
impolite. You don't have to be impolite.
That I'm
'cause you
chairing
care.
the committee. I'm chairing this committee.
Right.
And as I was saying, Legacy Foundation put in
It's a
$10,000
501c3.
towards, Legacy Foundation put in $10,000 towards the overall cost of creating the book.
That's in the ordinance. I've read the ordinance.
And so that's why the request is to specifically support Legacy Foundation for this one. And I believe that if the council wants to entertain any other entities, that's a fair, request to entertain. And if the appropriate process is to also, once those entities come to the council for consideration, to also do it by way of ordinance, then we can consider that at that time.
Mr. Brewer, let me come back to you. I'm aware that IU is 501c3, and I'm also aware the Legacy Foundation is 501c3. This ordinance does not provide for 501c3 itself. It provides for specific individuals. Again, it gets back to the few. We're doing something for the few, maybe to protect this one. May have acquired these documents or these books, or about to acquire them. Everyone else was told to purchase. That shouldn't have been done. And then you said the money was returned to the general fund, as far as you know. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Okay, thank you.
Does any other council members have any comments or questions?
This is Councilman Godwin, Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilman Godwin.
I just asked, was former Councilwoman Rebecca Wyden invited to this meeting?
Of course.
Okay. So did she indicate whether she would be attending?
I did not hear from her directly, and I was not able to contact my admin prior to see if she reached out to her to say if she was not attending or not.
Okay. Thank you. It just seemed like it would be helpful if she were here. So there's still there's some open questions about what happened and how it happened. And so
Well, I'm
you may want to
sorry.
consider that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
And I can
Kelly?
speak. I did, Ron Cohen, who is the author of the book, reached out to me a number of months ago and said that him and Rebecca Wyatt had spoken, and they were both concerned that the books were not being distributed and that there wasn't a plan in place to distribute them. So he asked if Legacy Foundation could assist with getting the books out into the community. And so we said, we said we don't want the books to go to waste. It doesn't make any sense to have them sitting in the public safety building. And so if there isn't any other option or any other plans in place, then we would take some of the books to try to at least help with getting them out. So we're more than happy if there's a plan, that the city has and they want to give it to other nonprofits or to schools or whatever. We're more than happy to see that happen. Our main concern is let's make sure that that the $20,000 that was invested isn't, going to waste, and that we're getting the books out because they're a great book about Gary.
Agreed.
Madam
Thank you.
Chairperson, I just had one question for the young
Councilman
lady.
Lay?
Are you aware that Gary has a pictorial book, very extensive, going back almost to the very formation of this community? Ma'am, I'm sorry. I said, are you aware that we already had that?
Yes, this is the, I believe, fourth or fifth edition. So the book is updated every 10 years or so, and this is the most updated edition. It's the new chapter with the current advances within the city. I have seen the other editions as well.
Yes, thank you. I have also.
Thank you, Councilman Lay. Does anyone else have any other comments? Are there any other questions that we need answered, specifically from former Councilwoman Rebecca Wyatt, that the council members do not feel comfortable proceeding with this on the floor?
Okay, good evening. I'm Mary Brown, Chairman of the Finance Committee, and this is the Finance Committee meeting for July 8th, 2021. On this evening's agenda there are three ordinances: 2021-47, which is an ordinance allocating funds to various budgets for COVID testing and vaccinations for the Gary Health Department, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Wayne Prince and Malik Harper, City Controller. And CPO 2021-50, an ordinance revising the JAG budget to allocate funds for the fiscal year of 2021, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, Malik Harper, City Controller. And CPO 2021-51, an ordinance authorizing a transfer of funds within the Police Department Support Services to cover the Animal Control Center repairs, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince and Malik Harper, City Controller. Mr. Harper, are you going to do the overview for these?
Yes.
Okay, we're ready.
All right. Ordinance 2021-47. The City of Gary Health Department is the recipient of various grants from the Indiana State Department of Health in the amount of $331,328. The Health Department is requesting an allocation of funds to the different departments, department budgets within the COVID fund, testing and vaccinations. We should have someone from the Health Department, whether it's Veronica or another representative, to explain further.
Okay, before we do that, I need to acknowledge the presence of my colleagues who are here today. We have our Council President, William Godwin, our Councilman at Large, Ron Brewer, Councilwoman Ty Atkins, Vice President, Councilwoman Linda Barnes Caldwell, Councilwoman, who else is it? Ty Atkins, and Councilman Glorious Lay, and Councilman Cozy Weatherspoon, and our council legal advisor, Attorney Renzer Williams, and the Deputy Mayor Trent McCain is here. So I think that's it. So everybody's here and we're ready to go.
Veronica, are you there?
Veronica is.
All right. Well, let's see. She is. Oh, there she is.
Hello.
Hi,
Hi. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. We're ready for you.
Okay. I was trying to get in. Okay. My apologies. So the COVID-19 vaccine grant, that's a grant that we will continue to do vaccines with from July 1st to June 30th of 2022. The next grant that we have is our childhood immunization grant that we receive every year for $77,000. Let me go back. The COVID vaccine grant is for $154,328, and the childhood immunization grant is for $77,000. And we receive that every year. Around about, we ask for more money this year. So, and then the COVID-19 testing grant, that's for $100,000. So, and that goes from July 1st of this year to December 31st, so we can continue to do testing.
Okay.
Are there any questions for me?
Do any of my colleagues have any questions
Oh, I'm sorry.
or concerns?
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
I just had a question. So each specific grant has its own fund. Is that correct? I want to make sure I'm understanding the attachments to the ordinance.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So,
Because it's three different pots that is coming from.
so I don't remember us creating these funds. So were these are existing funds? Like, for example, Fund 152, this is the one that it looks like the COVID-19 vaccine grant money is feeding into. This isn't a new fund, right?
So I think what happened last year, we had the department head was the COVID-19 vaccine grant, but every grant that we received, they just lumped it up into one grant. And this year they separating them all. When I speak of the COVID-19 grant, vaccine grant, and the testing grant, that's the two that I'm speaking of. But the immunization grant have always been there.
Okay, so my question is, so each grant is feeding into a different fund, and Mr. Harper, this might be a question for you. So I just wanted to understand, like Fund 708, Department 240, Department 1522, Fund 152. What are those funds? I know clearly it's associated with the health department, but are there specific titles for Department 1521, Fund 152?
I will have to look into that because I'm not familiar with the 702 fund number. So I'll look at that and then I'll have to get back to you.
It's 708.
708.
I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's Department 240, Fund 708. And, just want to make sure that we understand what funds the grant money is feeding into. Because to Ms. Veronica's point last year, I thought it all just went into one specific fund. Well, not the COVID. I don't remember the COVID one.
Well, the COVID and the vaccine and the testing
Those
was
the new
all in
ones.
one. However, the
Right,
childhood
it's one.
immunization has been there. It's always been
Okay.
there. That fund has
Yeah,
always.
just clarify what the name of the funds are for us, Mr. Harper. Well, for me and my colleagues, please. That would be great.
Mr. Harper, I'm sorry, Madam Chairman.
Yes.
Chairwoman.
Attorney Lay.
Yeah, the government is funding the county, so basically that's not normal for grants and things to go into separate funds within the general fund. Isn't that right, Veronica? Within the general fund, these different funds go in there, their own funding.
Say that for me one more time.
Okay, government is basically fund the county, which means everything is put in a fund inside of the general fund. So you should have, any grant you got should have went into a fund within the general fund.
Right, but they have to be separated out.
Yeah, I understand.
Last year we didn't have to do that, but this year that's what.
On the COVID money you mean?
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
yeah, it has to go ultimately into a fund.
You okay, Attorney Lay? Does
Yes,
that
ma'am.
answer your question? Okay.
Yes, no, I was just telling you, it's got to go into a fund.
Okay.
Yeah, that's government accounting, that's fund accounting. That's what it is.
Mhm.
And Madam Chair, may I ask one more question?
Sure.
Hold on. So this one is 152, operating budget only 100K. So Mr. Harper, when we look at the attachments again, so it's like, let's look at 708. So 708, 77,000. What, hold on, make sure, let me look before, okay, it's the second column, never mind. So you put it in the budgeted, you put the breakdown in terms of what the grant is into the second column of the attachments.
Yes, I believe Veronica, did you put this together or?
Yes, Ophelia and I, we put it together. So yeah, it's the same one. Yeah, that's what we put in the second column.
The operating budget. Mhm.
Broken down.
Okay, so for like the second one, I forget what grant you said that was. That was the COVID vaccine grant, the $100,000.
That's the testing grant. Mhm.
Okay. Well,
So it's three, I don't know which one yeah, the first one is the 154.
Okay. Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
okay. Anybody else have any questions? Any other council members?
Madam Chair?
President Godwin.
Thank you. I do have one question on the maintenance, 5 hours monthly at $20 for Mr. Watson. How many bi-weeklies do we have in the 2021 year?
Can you repeat that? Let me make sure I understand what you're asking.
So I guess how many bi-weekly payments are there in 2021?
For the maintenance?
Just for any of these? Because for example, right, if you say, we know it's not 24, right? Because if that's the case, then it wouldn't be 400 times 2 would be 800, right, for the fiscal category. And 800 times 12 would be 9,600. So it must be 25 bi-weeklies?
I want to make sure I understand what you're asking. Are you asking because everyone under the professional services, we do have contract people that will be working under this grant as well. They're not on the city part, but they by contract. So they're not salaried.
Okay, so this person is gonna get, is this, because what's the, so we have $1,200, right? So how do we get down to $100 for the bi-weekly? So if there's,
Oh, okay. Okay, I understand what you're saying now. Okay, my apologies. So what happened, this is only for maintenance, is only once a month. We're
Okay.
doing vaccines on Saturdays once a month. So we need maintenance to be there to clean up from 9 to 2.
so the bi-weekly would actually be $50. Is that correct?
It's $50 a week, so it make it $100 every 2 weeks.
For a year?
For a year, for a year.
But if there's 25 bi-weekly payments, then wouldn't that be more than $1,200?
It's 26 bi-weekly payments.
Yes, 26.
So 26 bi-weekly times 100, I'm missing something. So if there's 26 bi-weekly payments,
Mhm.
and we're saying the bi-weekly is 100, that's 100 times 26, right?
Correct.
So that would be more than $1,200, right?
Yeah, so I believe this is, okay. So we're doing this 5 hours times the $20. That's a month. We're doing this a month. So I'm not sure how Opie has this, but it does come out for $1,200 for a year. That's
Gotcha. Gotcha. It just seems $100 is probably off for the bi-weekly. It is off, I guess, for the bi-weekly. It's probably somewhere around 40 or something like that, I guess. Because the person's going to get paid every other week as opposed to once a month, right?
Yes.
So we would
But I'm
basically-
trying to see, but he won't get paid. He will get paid once a month. He's not going to get paid every week because he's only doing this once a month. You understand? So that's once a month that he's getting. That's why it's $100 times 12. So that's why it's $1,200 for a year. He's not going to get paid because he's only doing the service once a month.
Maybe the problem is with the form and not the math, right?
Probably
Because
so.
the form says bi-weekly pay.
Oh, I see at the
Right,
top.
but the
Yes,
form
at the
proposed
top. So that I
2021
can see where the confusion came in.
Yeah, because
So
everyone
that's-
else is being paid bi-weekly.
Yes, that's just once a month because he's only doing that service. It's once a month on Saturdays. So that's why he's doing that. And that's why she put it there, but I see where the confusion came in at. No,
Okay.
that's $1,200 for a year. It's
Thank you.
$100 off. Yes. So
Right.
it's $50 every 2 weeks if you break it down.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just, Mr. Harper, I'm gonna direct this one to you. So just one comment. We do need to, look back at the budget estimate sheets, because the sales are not appropriating correctly. So for example, it looks as though the breakdown of the distribution of the total of the grant, they're not associated with a specific line item. They were put like in the total. So if you go to the third page, that's 74,536. It's just under the total other services and charges.
Oh, it's actually the page before. Page before gives you a breakdown because they got 68,336 in the professional services column, 1,700 in travel and education, and then 3,000 in advertising, 1,500 in current charge. And that equals out to the 74,536.
So all of the math in that one column, if you do page 1 and 2, it doesn't equate to that.
Okay,
So that's not right.
check that out.
And it's the same for the other 2 funds as well.
Veronica, can you send me the this schedule, and I can fix it and send it back out?
I sure will. I will.
And Mr. Harper, I'm sorry, Ms. Collins, I didn't mean to cut you.
Oh, that's
Mr.
fine.
Hart, it's for all 3. It's for all 3 funds too.
All 3? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
I didn't get the Excel version of these, so I'll take a look at it once Veronica said it to me.
Okay. So quick question in regards to the vaccine grant. Councilwoman Atkins, you're saying it's not adding up to the 154?
Hold on. Which one is that? That's
the COVID-19 vaccine grant.
That's the 154.
So I believe the 22,563, the 1,000, and the 131 is adding up to the 154.
Wait. Okay, so for that, oh my gosh, for that one, it's not the last one. That one, which is the last one, right? That's the 152, Department 1521. It's the fact that you just the numbers are not in a specific line item; they're just on the total. So it's like 2 different issues depending on which one you're looking at.
So the 22,563 and the 1,000 and then the 131. You're saying that it's not adding up to what it's supposed to, and that's why.
Okay, so that's the one. Wait, hold on. The one you're referring to now is the second one. So, for example, on the first page of the grant that you're speaking to, you see how you got the 22,563
Yes,
under personal services.
that's professional. Yeah, that's the total amount for the professional services.
Yeah. So if that breakdown is right,
But it's going over to the next page though.
The 68,336.
yeah,
If you're adding everything up for the personal services, the 22,563, and then the 129,768, and then the 996, and then 1,000, and then the 131, you're going to receive the 154,328.
okay. So your breakdown is in your first column, not your second.
Exactly.
Okay. So that was my first question.
Oh, my apologies. Yeah. So yeah, the breakdown is in the first column.
Okay. So we can disregard the second column.
Yes. Well, I guess, yeah, you can. Yeah. And that's for all of them.
Okay.
Yeah, that's for all of them. So everything should total that bottom number, that grand total, everything should total that.
Okay.
Okay.
Any more questions or comments on 47? Okay. Then we'll move on to 2021-50. And Councilman Dwight Williams has joined us too. I need to acknowledge his presence. So, all right, 2021-50, which is an ordinance revising the JAG budget to allocate funds for the fiscal year of 2021.
Right, so the City of Gary Police Department was the recipient of a federal justice assistance grant during the fiscal year 2018. Due to some errors, the funds from this grant has not been allocated since 2019 to reflect the replacement within the 2021 budget. It is now necessary to revise the certain, they call it JAG budget entries, which are listed in the schedules attached. We have Chief Evans from the police department to further explain.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Hi. The Justice Assistant Grant is our JAG grant, which we receive along with every other agency in Lake County. The City of Gary receives an allocation every year for spending within that year. However, the money can be held until I think up to 3 years. It is a reimbursement grant. Therefore, the police department has to allocate the funds up front. Whatever the equipment is that you buy for, you cannot buy ammunition or weapons. You can buy equipment. You can pay some overtime with it, which we shy away from now. But in this particular grant, it's for equipment, and you have to allocate the equipment up front. The equipment has to be inspected by the grant manager from county that we've received it, and then within a number of weeks, they allocate a reimbursement check to the city. In this particular instance, this was just not added on to the 2020 budget from an oversight. So we cannot spend it until it's allocated in the budget, and then we can go forward and purchase whatever items we need with it.
Okay, so then you need to allocate the 38,941. Is
Yes,
that correct?
Yes.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
this is for the chief. Chief, do you have any type of idea what you might use these funds for? What type of equipment at this time?
Yes, this equipment is actually going to be used to replace furniture with.
Anybody else have any questions or comments on 50? JAG budget. Okay. If there are no more questions, we'll move on. CPO 2021.
Madam Chairman, I did have one question.
Yes, Councilman Knight.
I was muted. Let me come on. Chief, let me ask a question. How much overtime are you paying out of this JAG budget?
None right now, Councilman. We have in JAG, I believe 2016 or 2017, we allocated some funds for overtime reimbursement, but in this particular fund or none of the others are we doing that. We're going to use them all for physical items or equipment, which we can utilize for several years.
Thank you. That was it. That was the
That's
question.
it?
That's it.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Okay. Then we'll move on to 2021-51. An ordinance authorizing the transfer of funds within the police department support services to cover the animal control center repairs.
All right, so this ordinance is for the Gary Police Department. Is requiring a transfer between the accounts within the department to start repairs to the Animal Control Center. The transfers of funds is necessary to start, the service. The information I have is the mayor's advisory, animal control advisory board suggested that if we upgrade and expand the current shelter to add 10 isolated cages, renew intakes, rebuild 4 garages for storages, freezers and supplies, and add 5 outdoor kennels. The estimated cost would be $59,500.
So this,
Yeah.
so this $60,000 should cover that.
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
may I also add a few other points about that? Malik just covered the financial part, but I also would like to ask the council to consider that the Mayor's Animal Advisory Board spoke to this body on April 1st during its Public Safety Committee meeting and made these recommendations to the body at that time. The Gary Animal Control intake has increased over 400% over the past 4 years without increased funding, and the facility is subpar, as will be evidenced by some photographs that I will share with the Finance Committee here soon. Gary lacks adequate veterinarian services, so many intake animals are sick. Immediate emergency repairs are needed to add isolated cages so that sick intake animals do not infect the general population. Immediate repairs are needed to the garage for storage. The bricks are crumbling, paint is peeling, the gate doesn't close. There's no place for the dogs to get out of their cages and exercise. And there's inadequate space for storage, freezers, and supplies. It should be 4 car spaces for supplies. Repair funds are needed to add 5 outdoor kennels. And the total immediate repairs would be the $60,000 as indicated by Mr. Harper. One thing to keep this in mind for the council is that these funds are needed immediately, but in the long term, the mayor will be asking that the overall budget for Gary's Animal Control be expanded so that these needs can be met in the long term and we aren't putting, for lack of a better phrase, a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. If you will indulge me, Madam Chair, I'll share some photographs with you.
Sure.
Let's see if I can do that. I don't know if Sergeant Bernstein is on the line. If she is, as an attendee, I'd like for her to be promoted to a panelist, but I don't see her name. So I will do my best to go through the photographs for this committee.
Okay.
Let's see. I think you all might be looking at pictures of my children, so forgive me. Let me see where I should be sharing. Okay.
I give up 60,000.
All right. Bless your heart, Councilman. Okay. This is a photograph of the internal part of Gary Animal Control. Let's see. Okay, I can do it this way. This is the back of the building. This is the door that does not lock or close. It closes, but it has to be propped closed. This is the storage area that you'll see is overflowing because they have inadequate storage space. They cannot properly or neatly and efficiently store this material. The garage doors will not close and they need repairs. On a few doors, they stay open. They have freezers inside. So in the summertime, they are forced to work a lot harder to maintain the temperature inside the freezer. and they need more space in this facility. Another view of the garage door. These are the freezers that are to keep the remains of euthanized animals until they can be picked up by the county. This is also another view of the garage. Another view. This is inside the facility. You see the indoor kennels. The floor needs to be painted and updated. Another view. These are the inside of the kennels that need to be updated. This is where Sergeant Bernstein has to store dog food that has been donated by various entities throughout the region, and also from Good Samaritans who want to make sure that these animals have enough to eat. She's having to store it in a garbage receptacle. Overflow in a kennel that's not being used. These are the outdoor kennels, as I described, with the animals in there. This particular view is the front of the building. This is especially a problem because there are no gutters and downspouts here in the front of the building. So in the wintertime, when the temperature drops below freezing, this area here freezes over. And Sergeant Bernstein has told me that many employees have fallen in this area when it freezes over. So for a city, this exposes us to liability for workers' compensation. And more importantly than that, we aren't keeping our employees safe by just installing a simple gutter and downspout to stop this area from freezing over. I think you saw this picture earlier. This door does not lock. There's a close-up. This is the inside of the boiler room. This room is not climate controlled, so the boiler will often freeze. If you see there, the water pump has to be heated by a portable heater in order to keep the pipes from freezing. Sergeant Bernstein's husband is a licensed plumber, and he has freely given of his time in order to just repair this facility enough to keep it in operation. And he doesn't have to do that. He does it out of the kindness of his heart. He doesn't charge the city, but we have to address this issue. And forgive me if I'm mispronouncing the sergeant's name. I'm going to call her Sergeant B until she educates me on the proper way to pronounce her name. Here is another view of the boiler room and the pipes that have been there. I think that's the gas meter, if I'm not mistaken. The air condition does not work, and only one in the building works. So as you can imagine, in the summertime, these animals are suffering from elevated temperatures. They are hot and uncomfortable, as you can imagine. I'm not an animal aficionado, but what I do know is that they get as hot as we do. So if you're hot, they're hot. I have learned that much. The bottom of the walls here are rotted away, and mice come in and out as they please. So the staff there have to be very careful in terms of sanitation of this area. They have to closely monitor rodent feces to keep the area as clean as possible, because the animals get sick if they should come into contact with this rodent feces. This is the bathroom where employees have to use the toilet. And you see here that the bottom of the sink is rotted and falling apart and needs to be replaced. You can't see the top of this picture. We'll see if we can see it in another photograph. Okay. I'll go back to this one. You see the blue and the red hose going up here. This is a makeshift system to allow these washer and dryers to work. You see the exhaust pipe going through the wall. That's also something makeshift in order to accommodate this entirely small space. These units that you see here are residential units, so they get a workout. They need to be updated to commercial units so that they can accommodate the large blankets for the pets and be able to dry the large wet blankets without having to go through several cycles, which costs the city money and utilities, and it also puts undue wear and tear on these residential non-commercial units. You see here that this tarping system is also makeshift to keep the stimuli down for the animals and to provide them with some shade, and also to kind of keep them safe, because we don't want passersby to come in and poke at the animals. And this is a building that is adjacent to the Gary Animal Control. You'll see here that it is totally crumbling. This building is connected to the existing garage. If it falls, it can cause the garage to fall because the cinder blocks share a wall with this building. You'll see here the gates that are stacked up there, and they're all donated, but they have not been installed. Okay, I believe that concludes the photos that I wanted to share with the council in order for you to be informed about your decision. And if I can also ask the chair for additional indulgence, I don't know, maybe this would be the appropriate time, but I also would invite the chair of the Mayor's Animal Advisory Board to speak for this ordinance, and that is Attorney Sabrina Hake, if I could have the chair's indulgence.
Sure.
Thank you.
I thought I saw her, but I don't see her now. Oh, I see her. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Deputy Mayor, I just want you to know that no one can pronounce Sergeant B's name, so we call her Sergeant B. So I understand a lot of people had a hard time getting in tonight, and she was planning on coming in. We've been talking about this meeting, and I apologize, they just couldn't get in. I don't know what happened on their end, but I just wanted to reiterate what the Deputy Mayor mentioned and invite the council members. I think the council has a big heart in your humanitarian purpose, but I think if you see the animal control shelter in Gary, you would be very surprised. I don't think anyone's taken you out there, and so I would invite the council member first to go out there. Obviously, we need this funding. The bricks are crumbling. There's inadequate storage. We're violating our own laws. I mean, the dogs can't. They showed you the yard, which is great, but the dogs can't access it. The gate doesn't close. Excuse me. And at the public safety meeting, we did a presentation showing the data that supports that humanitarian funding actually benefits the population in so many ways, starting with violence. Kids who are exposed to animal violence and animal neglect, tend to be more violent as they grow up into adolescence and to adulthood. This is well documented. This is more a humanitarian issue, equally a humanitarian issue as it is an animal humane welfare issue. So the funds that we're asking for are very small at this point. Going forward, we need a better long-term solution. And I understand that there are several council members, including President Godwin, who is supportive of humane animal treatment. Cozy Weatherspoon just recorded another public service announcement announcing, talking about just humane treatment. Mainly it's an education issue for people in the public, but when the dogs do get confiscated, they're like at the end of their tether, literally and figuratively, and they have nowhere else to go. We don't have enough cages. We can't separate them. We're all just volunteers trying to make a difference, and Sergeant B is trying to do the best she can, but she doesn't have enough funding to take in animals and separate the sick ones, so then we end up paying more for vets. We need more vets, et cetera. So $60,000 will allow us to meet the immediate need, but it's not a long-term solution. It's something for immediate care to keep these animals at least in humane treatment. And I'll tell you, Gary Animal Control can't afford to bring in the animals that are being abused and neglected as they need
I believe that.
Yeah, that is true, Madam Chairman. I mean, it is, and I believe that how people treat animals tells us all we need to know about them. There's all kinds of statements in the Bible about treating animals humanely and encouraging us to treat them humanely as we would treat each other, and that's how we come up as a people. So I feel very strongly that better animal control funding is a way of making Gary a better place to live, not just for the animals, but for the people. And so thank you very much for considering this, and I truly hope that you will come out to see the Gary Animal Control and we can make some long-term changes. But for now, the bricks are crumbling. The freezers are full. There's no air conditioning. There was no heat for years, which is heartbreaking. But instead of looking back, let's look forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody have any comments or questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Attorney McCain, for a very exhaustive presentation. I think you more than proved your point. I don't know if $60,000 is going to be enough, but hopefully we don't have any other regulatory bodies coming in to get us after that viewing. But certainly there needs to be major improvements done, and I fully support using the funds and support services to get that going. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I have a question for the Deputy Mayor.
I'll yield to Councilman Lay.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead. Go ahead, Councilman Brewer. Go ahead.
Well, my question was, how soon are you planning to start this project?
As soon as the funds are made available, Councilman, we will begin the emergency repairs.
So has this went out to bid, and are these Gary licensed contractors that's on this job?
Nothing's going out to bid as of yet. Once we've identified in our request what we need. For example, the veterinarian services are estimated, and the 10 isolation cages are estimated at $37,500. Veterinary services are professional services, so they don't have to go out to bid. The 4 car spaces for supplies is estimated at $17,000. The repair funds for the 5 outdoor kennels is estimated at $5,000. So that's how we arrive at the number of $60,000.
Okay, and how recent was that? Because with COVID, things have went up, and so I just want to know how recent was those estimates given to you.
These estimates are within the last 4 weeks, Mr. Council.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair, I was going to ask first, this whole project don't have to be bid. Isn't bid $75,000? Is the state now, is it higher?
It won't have to be all bid out, Councilman Lay, because some of it involves, and a hefty portion of it involves veterinary services. And since those are professional services, they don't have to be bid.
No, I'm saying there's nothing in this project needs to be bid. You get quotes at this level, can't you? Why are we bidding?
You are correct, Councilman.
I mean, you wasting time here. In other words, I think you should move immediately. You don't need to wait for the council to come out. If they give it to you,
You
So,
are,
all right, but I'm glad to hear that. You rarely is that the case. So
My,
when will
my
you?
name is Lenise Givens. Can I make a suggestion too? I'm a citizen here. I've been here all my life. And that animal control has been in disarray for years. I can recall when I was like 15 years old, the way it's inhumane, the way they used to euthanize
Miss, what,
animals. They
Miss
put them
Gibbons,
in a
Miss
brick.
Gibbons, Miss
Yes, sir.
Gibbons. I have to wait till the chair give you permission to go, and Councilman Lay
Oh,
was
I
still talking.
apologize.
Okay,
That's okay.
Well, my general impression, we're going to do it if we get offline and pass this and let him go ahead and do it. We don't need to go. I mean, if the pictures, if you don't know by looking at the pictures, then assuming he took the pictures of the right building. Now, I'm assuming that. Well, he started off by showing us some very lovely young children, so he could have taken the wrong building. But assuming that, why don't we just go ahead and pass it, get it out of the way, and let him fix it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay. Oh, okay. Ms. Gibbons, I'm gonna give you a couple of minutes to say something.
I just also want to make a suggestion on some of the animals that are there, that they get, like the pit bulls. There are rescues that we can contact that can come and get those animals. And I mean, it's different rescues, so it won't always be crowded up in there. There's different ways to help these animals and different groups that we can contact. So if I need to, and I'm a citizen here, like I say, and I love animals. If I need to, yes, I will contact different groups for rescues. And we can do like the other little cities around here, like Maryville and Hobart. They animals shelters don't look like ours. Their animals aren't done like ours. It's just Gary. It's so ran down. We need to do better for not just the people, but for the animals too.
Thank
And I'm
you.
not just talking about dogs and cats. I'm talking about the raccoons and all the other things. Because you
Okay.
go different places, it's not dead animals laying all over the street. Here, you call animal control, they don't never pick up the animal. I'm out there picking up animals, and I'm just disabled, picking up dead animals out the street to take them to the animal control or burying them in a yard somewhere.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Gibbons. We understand. We got you. Got you. Anyone else have any comments or questions? Okay.
Madam Chair, my last question is, if we start, say, end of this month, when will we expect completion of this project?
Councilman, I do not know the answer to that. But once we have secured the contractors to do the various jobs, I'm sure they'll.
Comments or questions? Okay, if there are no more comments or questions, that was 2151. That was the last ordinance on the agenda. So, I think that's it. This meeting is adjourned, and we will move on to when is our next meeting? Pardon? Okay. So, thank you very much, and we'll move on to the next meeting. So
And everyone, I'd like to welcome you to the Public Safety Committee meeting. Today is Tuesday, the 13th. Our meeting was originally supposed to start at 6:15, but we did run over into some other committee meetings that we had going tonight, so we do apologize. Tonight, the Public Safety Committee has one ordinance before it, CPO 2021-49, the Wallace Broadnax Amendment, amending ordinance number 8831 to include requirements for armed security guards at certain establishments between dusk and dawn, and requiring 24 hours armed security guards at other establishments with a history of violent crime. Sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary, and Councilman at Large, Second District Councilman. Tonight, we're joined by our Council President, William Godwin, our Vice President, Ty Atkins, our Second District Councilman Cozy Witherspoon, our Third District Councilwoman Linda Barnes, Mary Brown. Fourth District is Councilwoman Ty Atkins, Fifth District Linda Barnes Caldwell, and I believe we have Councilman Dwight. Is he on here? Dwight Williams? Well, he probably will be joining us, but I want to also acknowledge him. The mayor is on with us, Mayor Jerome Prince. Mr. Eric Boyer is on also over our zoning department. Did I miss anyone? Mr. Jenkins from our law department that's on. I see our chief, Brian Evans. I see Attorney McCain is on also with us, and also the council attorney, Renzer Williams. Did I announce? And also Councilman Cloris Lake, Councilman at Large. At this time, we will start. I will turn it over to the mayor for an overview at this time, since he's the sponsor, or Councilman Cozy Witherspoon, either one. Mayor Prince.
Yes, sir. Excuse me, Councilman. How are you this evening?
Good, and you, Mayor?
Not bad at all. Thank you for the opportunity. So, as you said, this amendment to an existing ordinance, duly titled the Wallace Broadnax Ordinance, is a second attempt by the administration to address instances of violence and just undesirable activity, particularly at service stations. Certainly want to thank the council for hosting this committee meeting, and we're certainly prepared to stand by and answer any questions that we have to. But in essence, Councilman, I think there's been a lot of conversation and certainly a lot of opinions shared both ways, in favor and in opposition to this ordinance, and I respect and understand both perspectives. I think the larger point here is that we, at least as an administration, feel that it's important to acknowledge the greater point here, and that is that business owners have to be accountable and responsible for the activity that occurs around their establishments. And without question, that is the very essence of this ordinance. As it's been suggested, and as I mentioned previously, you all are aware that we attempted a similar action a few months ago, but in a separate ordinance, after some consideration, and certainly after the most recent tragic incident involving Mr. Broadnax and certainly impacting the Broadnax family, we thought it prudent and certainly necessary to reintroduce an ordinance, and we're hoping that the council gives it serious consideration and ultimately pass it on final reading on the next council meeting.
Okay, Councilman Witherspoon, would you like to add anything to this? Okay, I'll open it right up to council members at this time.
Excuse me, Mr. Councilman Brewer.
I'm sorry, Councilman Witherspoon.
Yeah, I had to unmute there momentarily. Excuse me for being a little tardy there. You know, I do want to add that it is the responsibility of every citizen in this city, regardless of whether they're a business owner, regardless of whether they're just a residential, you know, to maintain a degree of safety around their property. You know, we all face liability issues when things happen on our property to other people. And, you know, there's no exception to the business community as well. There have been a lot, of course, as you all know, a lot of activity, not good, that has happened at these gas stations. And, you know, Gary's not unique to this because, I mean, every day I'm looking on the news in Chicago, same thing. And one of the things that they use as a great asset, you know, I know they have security in a lot of those places, but the cameras, they're huge. They're huge. So, you know, whatever efforts that we could put forth, you know, to add a greater degree of safety, you know, for the residents of the city, I think it's our responsibility to do so. Now, I'm going to kind of temper this when I say this, you know, because I don't want to offend, you know, when I say this, but, you know, I hear a lot about the financial hardship that some of these businesses may incur. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to be upfront, and I think a lot of you all know this. A lot of these merchants, a lot of these owners of these establishments don't live in our community. They earn their monies and they take their monies outside of our community. Now, where I'm going with that is that I feel that there has to be some give back on their part to our community. You know, in many cases, they are not even employing, you know, our people, our citizens. So when we talk about the financial hardship, there has to be some give back. You just can't take from the community and leave us vulnerable. So with that being said, you know, I support the mayor's efforts, and I hope we as a council can find some resolution, some common ground in being able to provide some protections for the residents of our community. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to have President Godwin at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is anyone going to give a substantive overview of what this proposal is asking for?
Mr. President, I'm not sure what you mean by substantive. The mayor described what the ordinance entails, as did Mr. Chairman. What more are you requesting?
So what are you asking this body to do?
So, Mr. Chair.
What laws are we changing?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, I'm sorry, Mayor.
So I understand the councilman's question. You want to know the content of the actual ordinance. So it requires armed security guards at all service stations between the hours of dusk and dawn. More specifically, if there are occurrences of violent activity that has occurred at your station within the last, I believe it's 24 months. I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but the point is that there is a history, and we're certainly prepared with that data as well. Then the requirement is for 24-hour security, and that within itself is the essence of the amendment.
Thank you, Mayor Prince. I have a few questions, and I'll direct them, I guess, generally to whomever wishes to answer. How many gas stations are there in the city?
53, sir, which I might add is a bit much.
Right. Oh, have we had any conversations? I'm getting some feedback. Maybe someone needs to mute. Have we had any conversations with any of the gas station owners?
Councilman, I'll answer that one. Generally speaking, I would say there's been extreme dialogue, certainly during this administration. And I would venture to say that in the past, I mean, these occurrences haven't just started. There, at least at the very minimum, has to have been some dialogue about it. But recently, as it relates to this particular amendment, the short answer would be no.
Okay. Has the Gary Chamber of Commerce taken a position on this amendment?
Not that I'm aware of, Councilman.
Okay. Have we engaged the prospective security companies who would provide the armed security guard services? Have we had detailed conversations with any of them?
I'm going to yield to the deputy mayor. He's actually been working this ordinance closely and speaking with not only armed security guards, but others who've been impacted by it, and he would probably be best to give some specific answers on that. Deputy Mayor.
Before Ms. McCain come, let me announce the president of Officer Jolly, Travis Jolly, that's with us today, who runs Jolly Security, LLC. Attorney McCain, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. you stole my thunder because I was going to introduce Detective Zolli
Okay.
to answer the president's question with respect to the provision of these services in real life.
Well, thank you, Attorney McCain, and good to see you again, Mr. Jolly. Let me, I guess, step back and ask a few questions, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
About how many, what's the pipeline? What's the pool of individuals who are ready, willing, and able to serve as armed security guards in the city of Gary? What would be your rough estimate of the number of folks ready to do that? Mr. Jolly? You're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry about that. Can you repeat the question, please?
Oh, no problem. What would be your estimate, your rough estimate of the number of armed security guards, the pipeline, the pool of potential hires for your company, for the gas station? So we're talking, how many people do we think would be ready if we pass this ordinance tonight? Well, not tonight, but at our next council meeting, and it became law effective, I don't know, August 1, and gas station owners had to go hire your company and other companies like yours. What's the pool of available individuals who are licensed to do this?
Well, I can only speak for my company alone. I would say with the number of gas stations that we have in the city, we would probably have to hire additional officers, at least for my company. I know for sure. I would probably have to hire between 20 and 30 officers.
Okay. And what would be the average pay? I don't want you to run into an antitrust issue, but what would you say for your company, the average pay, as much as you want to reveal to the public to provide these services?
You're muted again also.
Can you hear me now?
We can't see you, but we can hear you. All right, thank you.
Okay. For a police officer, the going rate for especially a Gary police officer is between $45 and $50 an hour.
Okay. Is that how much your company would charge, or is that how much you would pay the armed security guard?
That's how much my company would charge.
Okay. So $45 to $50.
Yes.
And if there are, just looking at section B of, paragraph B of section 1 of this ordinance, this amendment to the ordinance, which defines violent crime, I would just assume, and it's of course dangerous when you assume, that probably every one of the 53 gas stations has had one of these 17 items to have happened, from murder all the way down to unlawful possession of a firearm. So let's just hypothetically suggest that 53 would have to have these services. Some of them, we know the major truck stops already do this. What would you say if you were in charge of gas station security for the city of Gary? What number would you project in terms of staff? Obviously, some people will call out sick, some people won't be available, some people will have to work their other jobs. What we need 150 people, 100 people at the ready so that these gas stations will remain in compliance and not lose their business license? What's that big number look like?
I would say a minimum of at least 2 to 3 officers per station.
Okay, so 53 stations, 2 to 3 officers, split the difference. I'll say about 125, 126 armed security guards would need to be available. And of course, excuse me.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I would
That's
not.
okay.
I wouldn't suggest a security guard at an establishment such as a gas station, because I wouldn't want untrained armed personnel around flammables. And that's the last thing we need me being a Gary police officer is an untrained officer at a gas station or untrained security guard at a gas station with a firearm.
I don't know if Attorney McCain may not want you to be his witness anymore, but we'll get to that part later. Let me just ask this. If you have 126 people that you would need, do you think that within the city of Gary, within Northwest Indiana even, there are 126 people who are currently not employed or not already committed, who have the time, resources, and proper accreditation, as it were, to be at service for these gas stations? I mean, you would have to hire 20 more, right? Do you think that would be easy for you to do? You could find those people in 30 days, 60 days?
I think, yes.
You think you could do that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so we would probably need 3 or 4 other Jolly Securities in order to meet this demand, right? Who could also do that with other individuals, right? And unduplicate.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's all my questions for now. I don't want to take up all the time. I'll have some more later. Thank you.
I see Councilman Lay, you're muted if you're trying to talk. It's in your mouth moving, so I didn't know if you were talking to us or not.
Yes, I was. Thank you.
All right.
Let me just up front. I will not. The last ordinance, I argued, supported. I remember Attorney Jenkins, who of course can speak for himself. We wanted to return to the committee so we could update it. The figures that I went and checked out concerning the figures given by our president, Mr. Godwin, these figures will far exceed what he's talking about. But I have one thing I will not support. I will never vote for this ordinance as long as Wallace Broadnack's name is on it. He's been a friend. I've been a friend of the Allen family more than most of you are old. And it was not Dozier Allen, it was someone that came a little bit later. I see no reason to continue to identify and bring this up that he was killed at a service station. Indirectly of the family, I did, it was brought to my attention. And again, I didn't talk directly to them. They didn't want this done if all possible. I think we certainly should pass some type of security ordinance. But I think we're going to have to move way away from what is being offered here. But I will not vote for it as long as his name is on it. I don't see his death is no more significant than anyone else's death to their family, no matter how you died. This certainly does not reach the level of a George Floyd. That was where the state was doing something to a group of people simply based on the color of their skin. And it's how they did not think Black Lives Matter. And they were doing sort of foolish things. Here, you're talking about basically common thieves trying to rob a business. So that's going to go on in several other places. But certainly I would be prepared to work on this ordinance. Much is required. Much is required. Much time is required. But I will not vote for anything that carries his name. And rarely do I run in a position I'm not willing to yield. That I am not willing to yield here. And I was a big advocate of the previous
incidents that we have at our gas stations and in our city and in our nation is sort of increasing and unprecedented. To date, as we speak, we've had over 19 homicides at various gas stations within our cities since January of 2020. And I'm sorry, we've had 19 non-fatal shootings that we can directly tie to gas stations in the city of Gary since 2020. We've had 9 homicides since that time, 5 in 2020 and 4 this year. And I'm just talking about ones that we can legally, in our case investigations, tie directly to the gas station. Either the crime scene was at the gas station or the incident occurred on gas station property. And in one incident, what we're doing right now is we're going through our data to track what happens at the gas stations as far as calls for services so we can evaluate how much time the police spend at gas stations. We're doing it for all 53 and we're through about a third of it. And at one alone, since 2020, we've responded to that station over 40 times, from everything from trespassing to auto theft to carjacking to a homicide. I won't say where these gas stations are to protect the privacy and not be able to get in type of trouble with that. But that's just some of the time that the officers spend. And in our community, you know, our gas stations provide a needed service. And a lot of times it's for convenience because people are not able to get conveniences at certain times of the day in everywhere in the city. So they do provide a service for our city, and that's why we have so many of them. But they also have a cost on our public safety as far as manpower and time.
So a lot of these calls that you're receiving, is it things that's happening at the facility with the owners or the operators of the gas station, or are these calls happening between individuals at the gas station?
That's a great question. They're happening between individuals, but in one case, which we just had 2 weeks ago, where we made an arrest at a gas station where we had a previous homicide of a young person, a young innocent young lady. The patron that we arrested came into the gas station with a fully automatic AK-47 pistol, laid it on the counter, and made his purchase. The gas station didn't call us. The owner didn't call us. No one called us. And what it says is this individual, who was a convicted felon, which is why he arrested me, shouldn't even have had the gun, was able to feel comfortable enough to go into the gas station with 2 other people, display his weapon, which he couldn't put in the pocket, lay it on the counter, pay for his item, and casually walk out the store. We received a call from a citizen that observed it, and then that alerted us to it, and we made an arrest in that incident, and we secured video. And if I can also add, we do have a video ordinance, and our gas stations are, for the most part, very cooperative when we try to get those items. So what I'm saying is it's a combination of the patrons and a laissez-faire attitude by some of the attendants that was not even something that was called upon. Who knows how many times it happened a day. And this is a gas station that a homicide occurred there this year.
And can you talk about the crime factor? We talk about the hour from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. is when we put our camera ordinance in. If you're going to be open after 10 p.m., any business have to have cameras in. Can you talk about the time frame of the majority of the incidents are happening inside the city? Is it during the daylight time or is it after 10 p.m.? Can you just speak on that?
Councilman, it's all over the place. There is no time or specific time where these activities happen more often than others. Some of this happens in the day, some of it happens in the evening, some of this happens late at night. It really just depends. I think it's a time of opportunity. Like I said, in our community, the gas stations provide more than the service. Sometimes they are the only local source for small conveniences for our citizens, diapers, baby food, milk. And in those situations, people go to the gas stations, everybody. So if you plan to do something wrong to somebody, a lot of times you just wait and post up at the gas station until they arrive. In one incident that was very well advertised, it was all on Facebook. Another problem that we have with video getting out, not by us, but by the gas station attendants or whoever. A homicide occurred at a gas station, and the men that was killed, 2 people walked in before that, a young lady and a child. And directly after they walked in, they shot this young man that was in the doorway. So, and I'm not blaming the gas stations or the businesses for the violence. I don't want to seem like I'm making them the responsible party, but I do agree that something needs to be done to dissuade the activity at the gas station and push it out. We patrol the streets of Gary constantly. We answer 1,000 calls, 1,400 calls a week. And many of that is at our gas stations because they provide these services to our citizens and we have to respond.
Chief, how can this work together when you are already stretched with trying to get the minimum staffing on the streets? And just say if we do pass this and we have additional security guards, I'll just use security guards this time, at gas stations that do not have arrest powers, how much strain does that now put on your department now when you are already struggling with a manpower shortage?
Well, the ordinance allows for it not to be police, it can be armed security, and I'm not a security expert. They have security officers that are local transportation center. You see them at airports. And I think the security guard is a first line of deterrence, just like an alarm system. Someone that has some training, and we wouldn't necessarily want the person to necessarily go straight to a gun, but to have a sense of security for our citizens and someone that knows what to look for and that can call us. when someone walks in with an AK-47, or maybe say we're not going to go in there because the security guard is there, or that person will immediately call the police and give us great information on who's there. And I will say, for the camera ordinance, I would love to see that expanded to all hours of the day at these convenience stores and gas stations.
So, Chief, does that bring? I don't know. It seems to me, it does trouble me. I heard it earlier talk about if a gun battle should happen at a gas station. We just know within a couple of weeks ago that a former police officer was just murdered at the bank there, not too far from where we just had an incident at a gas station in the city of Gary. Does that concern you if we should happen to have gunfire exchange between an armed robbery and a security guard at a gas station, which can go terribly wrong if the bullet goes the wrong place?
It could. That's a great concern and a great point. But I'll counter with this. We have homicides and shootings happen at the gas station right now. We've had, like I said, almost 20 non-fatal shootings at our gas stations and 9 homicides with no security guard there. So the citizens are in jeopardy already by the violence there. And as I said, people feel emboldened enough to commit murders in broad daylight, at all hours of day, or even walk into a gas station to feel a need that they need to go in a gas station with a gun because of some personal vendetta. And it's not unique to Gary. I'm glad that the councilman mentioned that. It is happening all over. Violence is unprecedented in our country nationwide, but some measures have to be taken. And I think all citizens and all businesses have a role to play in securing our city.
My last question, then I'll go back to my colleagues. What we're proposing tonight before the council, armed security guards with any type of violent history that has happened in the criteria. Have you seen this in any other departments throughout the country where this is enacted, where throughout their city they have imposed armed security guards to be, since crime is an issue all over, not just Gary, where this measure has been taken, where we can see how this model has worked somewhere else?
I have not done any research on that, Councilman. I have not seen that.
Okay, thank you. I'll go back to council at this time.
I'll yield to Councilman Atkins. Are you about to?
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
I've already asked.
just a quick, I guess, just topic I wanted to see if the colleagues and then Chief Evans, as he is the subject matter expert, could just kind of give me some feedback on this. I had a number of constituents of the 4th District reach out to me directly. And one of the, I guess, elements that they presented to me for us to discuss is possibly supporting closing of some of our facilities during a certain time period. So I know the dusk to dawn time period is nested within this ordinance, but if there was an option for us to consider closing gas stations from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., the spirit is to deter, right? And I know Chief Evans just said, we have I don't want to say influx, but it's crime no matter what time of the day. But do we see, in some instances, an increase during those time periods? And if so, if that was help? I know I have one gas station in the 4th District off of 19th and Harrison that I believe within the last year, maybe 14 months, recently implement that. So they are closed from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. daily. So I wasn't sure, maybe if I can ask Chief Evans to give that to the council as a data point from the time that they implemented that closing. Did we see, well, of course we would, because it would be closed, but, do we think that that will be something that we can implement citywide, or would the administration even consider that? Because like I said, I had a couple of constituents who wanted to discuss that as well. And I want to get the feedback from my colleagues as well. What do you guys think about that? And of course, it would have to be exempt from our truck stops, right? Or our, I guess, those particular entities that off certain corridors. But that is something to consider in terms of a deterrent, if in fact that's the spirit of what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Right now, I think, everything should be put on the table and we discuss it all. I said on the floor of the council that I would like to look at the camera ordinance, where I felt that every pump should be under surveillance as you come to gas station. And I think it should be properly advertised that you are on camera to the individual as a deterrent. I don't know, since we have implemented the camera ordinance in gas station, how that has helped you as the police chief in solving crimes and things of that nature. And what's your take about making sure that there's more cameras added onto these facilities, making sure the lighting is a certain wattage and things of that nature around the facility also. So Chief, I don't know what your take is on that, and what Councilwoman Atkins just talked about, possibly even as an option of closing gas stations at a certain time.
So personally, I believe that any measure we take to move forward to make our citizens and city safer is a positive. I will say that the cameras at the gas stations have been invaluable in us solving and taking people into custody and charging individuals with crime. We live in a day and age where cameras are invaluable in respects to charging individuals and securing a conviction in court. Eyewitness testimony is a thing of the past. It can be very unreliable. People's recollections change. And if you ask 2 or 3 people the same thing, they might have 2 or 3 different perspectives. But the video is irrefutable in most regards. The gas stations have, for the most part, been very cooperative about it. The one thing that I would add to that is having someone on hand that knows how to operate their system. We oftentimes have to bring in one of our officers to operate their systems, or even confiscate it in some instances, not with gas stations, to try to download the video. And lighting, of course, plays a part in that. And as far as closing or any other measure, I think this is a kind of situation where you throw everything up on the wall and examine it and try to get the points out of it. And to Councilman Atkins' question, I have not done the research on the gas station on 19th and Harrison, but I will have that answer for you very shortly. I can run that data first thing in the morning with our crime analysis.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilman Lay.
There's a thing in the Constitution called the Commerce Clause. We can't ignore that. That's the ability of a person to travel. If you didn't close every station in this town, basically it would be considered capricious, arbitrary capricious. So that's not even really an open question should be discussed. Closing them all, that would put a tremendous hardship on your community. I had a friend, my best friend owned a service station, and his customers never went too far away from the service station because they only bought $2 or $3 worth of gas. You certainly, if you would close them all, I assume you'd be talking about closing truck stops too. If not, you'd run into another problem. I think there's an important person missing from this meeting, and that person is the city court judge. The question comes down to enforcing the ordinance. To put something on the books that we're not enforcing. And I'm only bringing this up, not to pick it anymore, but we passed the ordinance, which I did not believe was going to be enforced, concerning repairs to the service station, handicap, things of that nature. Of course, we could always file another lawsuit. I'm not suggesting we do that either. So if we put this, we need to do a lot to look at it. One, the city judge certainly would be here. Let's just take that they paid the police officer $25 an hour. He probably is going to quit the police department. I mean, that figure is, as Mr. Brewer calculated, I did it by my head, but
$218,400.
Yeah, we it was 218,000. I certainly would quit the council. Now, Martinez, we have reserve officers. I used to represent the sheriff, a couple of them in Crown Point. They could give you certain licenses and certain training, but then they would say they don't have no responsibility for you. That's the thing you must say, a whole harmless clause. I do not believe if we said it at this level that it would be enforced. If you're talking about closing businesses, that's going to be hard to do, to close them all. We need to do something, and we need to do something concrete. But again, I don't think we can do that. If the court came in, one of the things, when I was code enforcement attorney, their fines will not reach the level of this payment. I mean, if you got them at that level, they certainly can't pay it. So we don't have debtor's prison. I mean, if the inability to pay, you can't do much to the person, but the court can do this. And if we opened it up when I was going for, you could give them some kind of community service. I mentioned that to you, ladies and gentlemen, before, that if they don't pay it, you said, fine, do 100 hours of community service, whatever. And the one business I did that with, they paid because they didn't want to do community service. I personally, I think we should work on this to try to pass something. I really do. But we need to get the court involved. We need to get a lot of people involved. We need to have written information because this is a major ordinance you're talking about. Like I say, we down opened up, closing the business. That'll last about 2 weeks. And we'd be in so many lawsuits, we'd probably quit and simply cave in because they would all probably be in the federal court. They'd be everywhere. And certainly when you're talking about the money that they're being asked to pay, they could put together $100,000 and pretty much have a more than adequate defense against what we're doing. So I don't think we should look at forcing a business to close because if they're not here, then I don't know. Maybe we can. I don't think you can close them without closing the truck stops. That certainly this community would have to go somewhere else to get gas. If you pass $218,000, and we would figure it at $25. I'd hate to look at the figure at 45 that we paid somebody. I know it's not the officer getting it, but to the private business. So, I yield to whoever wants to speak.
Councilman Godwin.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Brewer. I agree with Councilman Lay in part. Certainly, I think there are equal protection issues. I think there's Commerce Clause issues. I think there's no way you're going to be able to close part of the gas stations and not other gas stations within the same city. I also getting some feedback from you.
Yes.
I think also that this is not even sustainable financially. I know people think that small gas stations make a lot of money. They don't. You know, when you start talking about, and I said this last year, and some disagreed with me, that it would cost $45 to $50 an hour because you got to pay the security company that's paying the liability insurance, that's coordinating and organizing all of these various security guards to go out. And I think Councilman Lay is spot on. Why work for the Gary Police Department as a patrolman at $49,000 a year when I can work for Jolly or someone else and have my own business? We already have a declining officer pool. We're probably under 150 right now. We can barely, our maximum has become the minimum, our minimum has become the maximum, our aspirational goal to have 12 officers per shift. So we don't, it's financially untenable. And I think to have this conversation about an operating expense that we would be imposing on these businesses and not have had any conversation with the business is a non-starter. You know, look, I was the sponsor of the ordinance that tried to put some teeth into it, what we already had about having public restrooms. Pretty straightforward, one-time capital expenditure, maybe $5,000, $10,000 to get your bathroom up to shape so it'd be clean, neat, orderly, a great representation for the city. Corporation Counsel's office was supposed to send out letters to all 53 gas stations informing them of that requirement. It never happened. I mean, that's pretty basic. We're just saying send out a letter saying that you have to have your gas station in compliance. There was supposed to be a whole protocol for it. If it did happen, I never heard anything about it, and I asked about it and never got any updates to that effect. So if you can't even get a bathroom for $5,000 to $10,000, I don't see how you, when you start talking about $45 to $50 in 24 hours, you're getting close to $400,000 a year. And I think most business owners, if they're smart, it would be cheaper to close. And the last thing we need is more brownfields, more vacant businesses. Most of these gas station owners own several gas stations all around the region. And so it'd be more efficient for them simply to double down elsewhere and write ours off as a loss, i.e. the village. That's what people do in real estate. You know, I also ask and say to Chief Evans' point about the number of calls. I guarantee you there are probably more calls to Edgewater and some of the other social service agencies that pay zero in taxes than we get to the gas stations. I mean, I'm certain, and Chief Evans, you know, there's hundreds of calls that you get to some of the social service agencies, and they don't pay 1 penny in property taxes. But we foot that expense. I did speak to a very influential individual in the fuel industry, and he asked me, are you all privatizing policing? And so I asked the question, is that what we're supporting? Do we want to privatize policing and put gas station owners in charge of policing our city? Because they're not inviting people to come and commit crimes on their property and kill and steal. They're a business owner just like anybody else. And now we want them to be in charge of doing what we're supposed to be doing. Because who are they going to call when someone creates a criminal act? They're going to call the police. We should be focused on how we're going to adequately pay and equip our police officers so that they can do the business check-ins, they can adequately rove around the city to ensure that there is coverage. But the bottom line is this: no gas station owner is going to pay anybody $50 an hour, $40 an hour, $25 an hour from dusk to dawn or 24 hours. It's not going to happen. Not your small neighborhood gas station. So I think that it's really a non-starter from the beginning. I don't think we even have the capacity to enforce it fairly. So I think there's constitutional issues. I think there's sustainability issues. I think there's capacity and pipeline issues. It just seems to me that this has not been very well thought out. The right people are not at the table. The numbers simply don't make sense. And I just don't support privatizing policing, certainly on this scale. And I would just ask Chief Evans, what hour have most of these violent crimes taken place? That you mentioned, you said there were 19 non-fatal, I think it was 19 non-fatal shootings. At what hour did most of those happen?
They're all over the place. I'm looking at my list now from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., 3 p.m., 9 p.m., 7 a.m. It really varies. So I don't think it's a matter of a time-based thing. It's a matter of the opportunity and the two people coming together. Again, the gas stations in many of our communities are the only congruent place where these people can meet and buy things that they all need.
Well, let me ask the question differently. Because the majority of the times you just gave are not from dusk to dawn, right? So even if we pass this, then it wouldn't even necessarily be the case that the security guard would even be there during the hour that most of these crimes happen. So would you say, because I'm seeing things happen at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, it has nothing necessarily to do with midnight or 1, 2, 3 in the morning. So I guess if it's only 19, it should be pretty easy to know where the majority are happening. It's a small sample size.
Well, like I said, the times are all over the place. Certainly there are more in the evening and early morning, meaning 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. Then there are midday. Okay. We had our 2 homicides this year at the gas stations were in broad daylight, one at noon, one at 7 a.m.
Okay.
And so they're all over the place, but I will certainly yield that the majority of them are in the evening hours and in the night hours. More people are home, more people are traveling at that time for all businesses.
Okay. Well, Attorney Lyles says that I have no evidence to support anything that I've just said, which I guess I'd like to see what data the administration is providing. We don't know anything. There's no security companies on here that seem to be in favor of doing this. I don't see that evidence or support. I don't see a legal opinion that this would even be permissible, the various options that are being proffered. There's no conversations with the gas stations, who are the parties that we're actually talking about putting such a huge burden on them. So, we can talk about evidence, but I'd like to see who's going to pay for it. Thank you.
And I'd just like to add, there's an issue right now in our police department since the casino has opened up, where our manpower is becoming an issue. Is that not true to the chief, where we have a lot of people that's taking the overtime they normally would take for the police department, And now because the casino is paying more money, they're taking the overtime there. So I'm just wondering, would this become another issue here if the pay is much greater than what we can pay as a police department? Would that become a even more strain on the police department, where we're not able to hit our staffing level where we need to because they're not filling the overtime, which we depend heavily on the overtime positions at this point now?
So to your question and your great question there, I'm not advocating that these gas stations are manned by police or that we drain our policemen. We're doing this. It says security firms, and again, I'm not a security expert on how that's done, but it's done at the truck stops have police and some have security guard. The casino, to your question, and when they first opened, hired a great deal of officers, but they have since cut back significantly as they saw that their need for officers had waned and they increased their security company. So that issue is no longer what I consider a problem here. And if you poll the officers, they had a significant cutback in the officers that they employ at the casino at all times of day, which has evened out, which I knew that in the beginning of their opening, they want a significant police presence out there. And as they saw that Gary is as you know, we're on a different kind of call, but Gary and our areas are safe for people to go to the casino and do business. They cut the need for their officers.
Chief, I would ask, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think that would happen in any business.
And Chief, I would add, and I wouldn't want this on the public record, if you can provide me just the last 2 weeks, what our minimum staffing has been in the police department. I think that's going to weigh very heavy on probably a decision I will make on this. But I have to say, I'm going to agree with Councilman Lay. With the titling of this, it's definitely an issue for me altogether. And I have shared this with some individuals of the family that I do have an issue with the titling of this altogether. I personally would like to just us to take a look at the ordinance 8831, that is the camera ordinance, as a council, and also the lighting, if there is no lighting section of that we look at that also and increasing the camera ordinance there. At this current state here, where this is written here, I can't see myself supporting this at this current state. Is there any other council members that's on that would like to comment before I go to any public that may be on?
Mr. Chair, I'm not a council person, obviously, but I would like to respond to the president.
Yes. Well, go ahead, Attorney McCain. Yes.
First of all, the president is mistaken. The law department did issue a letter to each of the 53 gas stations in the city of Gary, along with a copy of the ordinance, and we instructed them to consult their own attorney. Because as the president well knows, we aren't their lawyers. So we aren't going to tell them how to abide by the law. We just notified them of it, and it's up to them to discuss it with their counsel, to discuss the import of the ordinance and what they should do based upon those legal implications.
Mr. Chair, may I respond?
Before you respond,
I wasn't quite finished, but
well, Attorney McCain, before you go any further, I do want to respond. Do we send that out to everyone, asking them to consult their own attorney when it's a law that we put on the books?
That is, as corporation counsel, that was my decision, because once, and Attorney Lay will probably back me up, is that we don't represent these gas stations, and we get ourselves in trouble if we try to tell them how to abide by the law. Our job is to notify them of it. And it's their job to consult with their counsel to see what those legal implications are. That's a conflict of interest for me to give legal advice as the corporation counsel for the city to our corporate citizens. They have lawyers for that.
So I thought you would probably send out a letter notifying them what the new law change was that was done by the council.
That is correct. And I'll be sure to provide this council and this committee rather with a copy of that letter as soon as I can get the corporation counsel to dig it up.
Okay, I'm going to have you to finish your statement, then I'll go to Councilman Godwin, President Godwin.
I think 19 homicides at gas stations.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I want to respond directly to the point he made before we go to a different topic.
Okay.
I want to be germane.
I'll allow that.
So if I may, I just want to respond directly to that point. When was that notice sent out to the gas stations?
As I said, I don't have the notice in front of me,
Okay.
but I did direct that it be noticed out to each of the gas stations. I will provide this committee with the answer to that question afterwards. I didn't expect to be questioned on a letter that I issued last year.
Okay, and let me just ask this. Was it issued prior to December of 2020?
Indeed, that's last year.
Okay, so part of that ordinance required that the building department or whoever was issuing business licenses ensure that the businesses had complied prior to their getting a renewal of their business license. Now, Mr. Stalfa is not on here, but if in fact they all received the letter, did the administration ensure that the business owners had complied before issuing a business license to the 53 gas stations?
I have not consulted with Mr. Staub, so I cannot intelligently answer that question. I'll get you an answer.
Thank you. And I would just say that I think for a conversation of this import, the Corporation Council should certainly be present. Thank you.
Okay. Senator McCain, you may continue.
Also, I'd like to share some experience. Not only consider the cost of security, but they have to consider the cost of the lack of security when a plaintiff's attorney can sue them for wrongful death. So that's something that this council, or this committee rather, should consider when they are advocating for these business owners with respect to costs. Because there is a cost in not following the advice for getting security. I can speak on that on experience.
Are you finished, or did you just mute yourself?
There is one more thing, and Chief Evans, have there been any homicides reported at Edgewater in the past 2 years? Maybe the chief stepped away. Well, I'll find out the answer to that question and supply it.
Sorry, I'm here again. Please repeat your question.
Have there been any homicides reported at Edgewater in the 2 years from January 1, 2020 to date?
No.
Any other social services reported a homicide?
No.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Councilman Gowan, President Gowan.
paragraph B begins with murder and ends with unlawful possession of a firearm. It goes way beyond murder in terms of the gas stations that will be required to do the 24-hour armed security. So we're not limited to homicides. But to that point, of the 53 gas stations, given the definition of violent crime, how many of the 53 would be required to have the 24-hour armed security if in the past 18 months any of those items have occurred?
Well, certainly all of the 19 for the non-fatal shooting, and a few of them also had a subsequent homicide at them already. We are also evaluating, and as I said, all 53 gas stations for all our calls of service for one of the 17 exemptions in here. We had to do a deep dive because most of the gas stations have multiple calls for service. And so it takes more time than we actually had to figure that out. But certainly everything on this list that we have will qualify for that.
So I'm just want to make sure I'm clear. Are you saying that all 53 gas stations have done at least or have had a recurrence of any of the items between numbers 1 through 17?
No, I'm saying 22 of the gas stations have definitely had those on one of all these 17, and we're examining all 53 from 2020 till July of this year to see if any of those qualify. We're not quite done with that data yet.
Do we know how many of the 53 gas stations already have armed security guards, either part of the day or during a whole 24-hour period?
The only gas stations in the city of Gary that have security guards or armed security at any time of the day are our truck stops. which
Okay.
are 3 on Grant Street, the 3 on Burr Street.
And did any of those locations experience violent crime?
They did not experience homicides or some of these incidents. They already have armed security because they're truck stops and the nature of trucking. I was a fleet manager for years. There are going to be crime there. That's why they have security there. They have had crime, not homicides, not some of the things on here, but there has been crimes there. And with that, we've made several arrests at those stations because our officers are already there.
Right. So let me ask just lastly, what is the penalty for the gas station who does not comply?
Say that last part again, sir.
What's the penalty? So if you don't do it, what happens?
If they don't do what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
If they don't provide security from dusk to dawn and or 24 hours, depending on their history of violent crime, what's our punishment?
I don't know if that's a question for me, sir.
All right. So who has the answer?
I'll take a stab at it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And that would be a statutory or ordinance violation for the first offense will be $2,500. And for any subsequent offense will be $7,500. If there are continuing violations, it would be $7,500 per continuing violation. At some point, and this is where we can tweak the ordinance, at some point, if there are unpaid ordinance violations, then that business's license can be revoked pursuant to our ordinances.
So thank you, Attorney McCain. Let me follow up from my own education on that. So what's the maximum that the Gary City Court, I'm assuming that that's where these violations would be adjudicated, what's the maximum fine that they can issue to a business over a 12-month period, or is that not how it works?
Based upon my knowledge, there is no maximum. There's
Okay.
only a maximum with respect to the first offense. There's a maximum of $2,500, and that's based on state statute, not city ordinance. And every subsequent offense is $7,500 per offense. So as long as you keep offending, you can rack it up $7,500 per. So there is a cost there. And at some point, if the administration decides that this particular scofflaw has not paid these fines, then the business license can be revoked.
So let's just say, just to be clear, if Mr. Jolly's, one of his able soldiers, isn't able to make it to work, and I guess a code enforcement officer or a police officer, I suppose, I guess, would issue a citation, is that correct, to the business, and that would cost them $2,500 for not having a person there that one day. Is that correct, if they were to be found guilty of that?
That is a very narrow example, but if we were to say, yes, you don't have a person here, we can fine you. But a part of it is education as well, Mr. President. We have not, if there is a person with a inoperable bathroom, I think that the way to be a good corporate partner or a good municipal partner is to say, you realize that the ordinance requires you to have an operable bathroom. We'd like for you to get that fixed. Then you come back and you see if it's been fixed. I can give you an example of a gas station here in the First District that had garbage strewn on the parking lot. We could have fined them, but we chose to reach out to the owners and say that this is in violation of the ordinance, give them an opportunity to cure the defect, and if they don't cure it within a reasonable period of time, then cite them with the ordinance violation.
And I agree, and I thank you all for working with that business. Let me ask, you talked earlier about foreseeability, which I find very interesting, and negligence. So let's just follow your example. Let's say this law passes in its current form, and our code enforcement person comes on August the 1st and sees that a particular gas station has no one there, even though they've been notified that this is the law and they didn't have anyone there. And our code enforcement officer or police officer said, you know what, we're not gonna fine you today, but I wanna make sure you know this is the rule. And you didn't do this, but you need to start doing it. But then later on that day, someone is murdered. Do you think the city has any liability for not enforcing its own ordinance, but giving a pass? And if a situation happened and we thought that an armed security guard could have prevented it, we didn't do anything, but we were a good corporate citizen, do you think that has legal ramifications?
No, sir.
Okay.
We enjoy tort claim immunity under the Indiana Tort Claims Act. So our ministerial duties with respect to enforcing the law, we are immune from that. I've sued many a school district, and we cannot say that they did not choose to enforce a law, and that's why they have liability.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, Councilman Lay.
Yeah, I suggest, Deputy Mayor, that you give every service station the opportunity before you file charges, or that you're just making an arbitrary decision. You're giving special treatment. So now you should go, somebody, not a bigger you, should go around and give them all the same. We basically have said we're giving one an opportunity to do something. In other words, let me give you an example of something. When I was code enforcement officer, we had a discussion what would happen if they gave the mayor of Gary, and there is a person who could verify this, at that time, Rudy Clay, a ticket. And I said if they gave him a ticket, it came to court, he would be treated the same as anyone else by me. And I said, so what you should do is you have to correct it. Matter of fact, since Attorney Lyles is on the phone, they filed one against a client of his wrongfully. And I told him if they didn't get rid of it, I wasn't going to get rid of it. And of course, he will attest that I didn't attempt to get rid of it. They made a mistake, they being code enforcement. So again, I think ordinances must be enforced against all or none. You'll be much safer, by doing it with all of them than simply doing it. And I understand what you were trying to get at. You guys are not vicious, but you still can't give one a break without giving, as I say, the many, give them a break. One thing you could do with the ordinance, and it's being overlooked, probably if you assign community service, that's why we need to judge. You can do that in the state of Indiana. So a person was refusing to pay the $2,500. I asked that the court give him, it was $7.50 was minimum wage. Divide the $2,500 by $7.50 and give him those hours of community service. He paid within, I guess, within a week of being notified of that. So that's why I say you bring the judge, and I agree with you. She can fine him theoretically 66 times a year if she wanted to. But that would, of course, eat up a tremendous time of the court. We then need somebody to collect this money. I understand. Matter of fact, I was told by the mayor, there may be $1 million in uncollectible fines now that we're not getting. That was one of the reasons he gave what I considered a valid argument about somehow trying to shift it to the county, certain issues in the city court. And of course, I said then I wasn't prepared to do that. That's our court, we would keep it. So even though you assess the fine, you also would have to demonstrate that they have the ability to pay and are not paying. It's like child support. If the person can demonstrate he does not have the ability, they still may find another way of punishing, such as taking his driver's license or doing something else. But you would have to do that. So fining will not necessarily get you to the solution you're trying to reach. Even though the court would turn around over and over again, 53 times she would have over probably several thousand cases against service stations. And no one is collecting the money. It's just stacking up over the clerk's office. So fining may not be you need to do something else to these owners. That's why I said we need to have the city judge here and see what we can do in terms of community service. That may force them to do something, but still, $400,000, I'd pay the fine myself and continue to try to function. And once they discover that, I think they all are going to attempt it. They're going to attempt to do that. And I agree with you about what you said. I would agree with you about. I do agree with you. You cannot advise the general public about our ordinances. You must make them available. And of course, there's nothing wrong with telling them to see their own attorney. Because you advise them and you do it wrong, that would make you responsible, or the city of Gary responsible. You're only basically supposed to handle, as you say under the statute, the council, the mayor, and departments within city government. Nothing about, the private person. Say we had a similar discussion where a person was calling Mr. Williams and telling him he worked for him. He really does not. He works for us being the council. He has no responsibility to deal with the public. And you wouldn't need this corporation council unless you want to gamble. You can gamble and do it, but otherwise you shouldn't do it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just real quickly, I guess the answer to the question you asked earlier was, is there any other city or municipality that we're aware of that has a similar requirement? I think there's nothing wrong with innovation, but if you're the only one doing something, sometimes you ought to scratch your head and ask why. And so I don't know how, if we've done a 50-state survey or a multi-city survey to see who is doing this, but I think if we're going to go this alone, we should strongly ask ourselves, why would we be the only one doing something like this? And are there good reasons not to do something like this? But if I'm wrong about it and there's other cities that are doing it, I certainly think we should learn and explore and see how it has worked out there. Is there evidence to show that it has in fact been a deterrent for crime in a similarly situated environment? I still think there's strong legal issues. I don't think it's financially sustainable. I don't think it's enforceable. I think it's well intended, but ultimately we have the responsibility to police the city of Gary. The business owners pay property taxes, residents pay property taxes. We have to make public safety a priority. I don't want gas station owners organizing public safety in major public venues like gas stations, as they have become in our city. So I think there's just a lot of questions that are unanswered here. There's very little to no research that has been done to support this. Corporation Council is not even present. There's no one representing the Chamber of Commerce, no one representing gas station owners. I just think that this is, I understand the spirit of it, but it just seems not thought out in terms of the implications of what we're doing in every advertible sense. Thank you.
Is there any other council members that want to speak? I do want to open up to any of the public that may be on that would like to comment. Any other council members? Seeing none, is there anyone from the public that would like to speak at this time? So we can check the chat and see if there's anyone in the chat at this time. Make sure I get an opportunity.
Mr. Chair.
Broadneck,
Okay.
Only to say it.
If I may.
Okay. Okay. I will yield to you, Attorney McCain, and I believe Mr. Broadnetz is on. Anthony Broadnetz.
Absolutely. I promise my comment will be 10 seconds or less. As Chief Evans said when he testified, it's the police's job to patrol the rights of way in the city of Gary and the streets. It's not their job to patrol 53 gas stations. Why? It's not private. It's these businesses being responsible for security on their premises. I hope that wasn't more than 15 seconds.
Well, if I can, and also less than 15 seconds, I would just ask you, Attorney McCain, why is no other city doing this? And ultimately, it's going to be the armed security guard calling the police officers. So if we're not meeting minimum staffing, what are we really doing? anyway.
Well, Mr.
That may have been
President,
more than 15 seconds too.
well,
Okay,
Mr. President,
let
maybe
me, I'll let you all go back and forth. Let me have Mr. Broadnets, give him the time to chime
We'll
in.
meet at the Beach Cafe.
Yeah, good evening. I downshifted for the day, so I won't put my face on right now. But yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Thanks, Attorney Deputy Mayor McCain, for inviting me to the meeting. I wanted to address a number of different things that I heard today. One, the issue of tying Wallace's name to it. I can understand that his life, and certainly appreciate and agree that his life is no more important than any others. But there's certain things that move communities more than others for whatever reason. There is something called the Amber Alert. You know, certainly there were more kidnappings before and after, but for some reason now it's called the Amber Alert. You know, Wallace was obviously very well known in this community by many, too many. And so I would definitely not be opposed and would not think it's a reason to oppose this amendment to an ordinance. As I understand it, the ordinance is already on the books. This is an amendment to an ordinance just because it has his name on it. The other thing is I can certainly understand and appreciate all of the different options that are out there on the table and what to do and what not to do potentially. But as I see it, there's a primary issue. The primary issue is the relative safety of the citizens of Gary, right? We can always oppose something or say maybe there's a better way, but at some point you have to do something. You know, maybe other cities aren't doing it because they don't necessarily have the same level or density, if you will, of intractable crime and poverty and some of the issues that we know Gary faces. I'm from Gary. I'm not saying that to poke fingers at anybody. I moved back from Houston, Texas to try to do good things in this area, particularly involving Gary. So, but I know where my city is. So, you know, while there may be, you know, reasons to oppose, I also think there are many reasons to support. At the end of the day, the key figure is it is going to be a cost, if you want to look at it that way, to the businesses. But I look at it as a potential, as an investment. When you have a business that is reliable, that provides the services that are expected, it's clean and it's safe, you know, the long game is you're going to have more customers over a long period of time. I suspect that many of these operators don't necessarily care enough about the community to play the long game. So you can cater to that thought process and say, well, you know, security is going to cost too much. Well, cameras cost something, extra lighting costs something, everything costs something, but those are investments. And I would just simply say, as a counter argument, is that, you know, security in some form is really an investment. And I'm sure that, you know, security officers, qualified security officers can be found if they're needed. Hopefully, I mean, ultimately, you'd like to work your way out of that problem to where they're not needed, but that's not where we are today. So, and I will, I'll stop there. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Broadnets. Councilman Lay.
Yeah, let me respond to one thing. We are representative government. All you have to convince that the ordinance is good is the 9 of us. Now, some people think we're in town hall meetings. We don't have to. George Floyd was a crusade. In other words, I have indicated that I am prepared to work on this ordinance. I just simply do not want it to be known. The only time I worked on it was a person I knew. I've known the Allen family and around the block. I've known members of your family. In fact, I knew Mr. Wallace. He's somewhat younger than I am. So I'm not saying we should, and his name add nothing because you only have to convince 9 people. And we're here, well, 10, you might as well throw the mayor in. He has to sign it after we may make an amendment to it. So he may say he don't want to sign anything that does not have that name on it. So we differ on that, but we're not differing on security. We certainly are going to have to look at the price to pass an ordinance that does not work. It makes no sense. There are ordinances in this country that said black people can't drink at the same fountain as white people.